Hello YouTube, how's it going? So this is just a small video of my idea for a pan pizza. It's using biscuit dough. Um, I got some decent pepperoni and salami. I didn't want to use just plain regular Hormel or something. So I went for something a little nicer. I'm using mozzarella cheese as my cheese. I mean, you can use any cheese you like, just as long as it's shreds. I plan on stuffing the crust with string cheese. That's basically the same style they use when they do stuffed crusts at pizza joints. The goal was to use the flaky grands because it rises. I'm not using a Teflon pan. I'm using a glass pan, so it's gonna not really be crispy on the outside and black like it would be in a like a cast iron or Teflon. And I'm doing it in a square, not a circle, like some places. I I mainly were going for the layered crust because it's gonna rise. I'm gonna put cheese in the middle and put a layer on top. You don't really have to use two layers of dough. I'm just trying to go for the whole thickness. I want it to be like really big and huge, and I plan on like reheating it in the oven. So the cheese is just every time I reheat it, it's just gonna melt and melt and melt. It's not really gonna get too black in the glass pan on the inside. It's gonna be really soft. It's biscuit dough, but it's gonna be like bread soft. So it's a taste. If you really want a pizza dough, you might want to try a different Pillsbury dough, and basically one that's not as like sweet as well, and try a different pan, including the stainless ones, and put a little oil in it so that way you get more of a crisp to it. Uh, the thinner your dough, the better. It's just you need to make sure, since you're making your own dough, that you kind of aim for it to rise a little bit. Otherwise, you'll have a lumpy in some areas and bubbles in the other type of pizza. The only problem is with making this is with this type of dough, if it's out more than a couple of minutes, it starts to expand and rise on its own. So you have that as a problem to deal with. It also has margin in there, so it kind of added to the cook time a little bit. I would say it took me about 45 minutes to cook the whole pizza. And normally, if you were to just place each biscuit individually on a sheet, it would take 10 minutes to 12 minutes before they're brown and crispy. Otherwise, you'll burn them. If you wanted to, you could also avoid the second layer and just on the other side of the cheese, fold the dough over and cover the cheese and go from there and actually put the sauce right there. I didn't want to do that because I was going for more like a lasagna thickness. I wanted to be able to just in one slice make it a whole meal. It's going to be very rich also, by the way, between the marinara and the cheese, especially if you use a lot of cheese like I'm doing. The bread's already sweet, so if that's too nauseating for you, I would suggest you definitely take the same concept and just move into a different bread. There's tons of regular biscuits, but at the end of the day, if you use regular biscuit dough, you don't have to worry about ruining the grand's flaky aspect where it rises, and you can just mush it all together into one pile and then roll it out on a table and just pack it in the pan like hamburger meat, and it'll really absorb the pan. If you look, that's already some serious thick. And if you really look at the bread, they have it like the way they layer the dough before. It's just so soft and squishy, and it's a different biscuit. But it really turned out great, and it came out the way I intended. Don't be scared of the spaces in between the dough, but just make sure you mash it enough that there's none. When they do pan pizza, because of the dough, it bubbles on the bottom and has a lot of grease and oil in it, and there's always cracks at the bottom, and it's so. But by the time they cook it, it's already like expanded, and it'll fill the pan. Um, I'm using this glass dish because of my preference, and I didn't want to have any like black ends on my pizza. But I really suggest you use more like a cast iron or Teflon. And just like I said, stainless steel is probably the best if you don't like Teflon for your health. Um, Most places they use a lot of cheese and toppings, and they if the bread's not too thick, they might pile on a lot of sauce. I didn't. I used just like one jar. I could have probably used way more, and I probably could have used a whole nother bag of cheese. But the thing is it's gonna expand out of the top of the pan, so I kept it pretty tame. Um, like that, I'm the pan's basically going to double its size, if not almost triple, just because of that style of dough. It doesn't have to be really even. Um, if you put the dough really nice and even, when you put your toppings on there, it'll spread it out and keep it pretty tame. So yeah, so I just used a basic Prego. You can use cheap ingredients. I just, for the taste of everything, because the bread I'm using, I didn't want to use like a cheap sauce. So I used Prego, and I used like an actual deli cut to do all my ingredients. I was gonna use like a Colby Jack, but I just went with mozzarella. What I may do is show the same recipe later and just show what it looks like with half the dough. So I just evenly spaced it out, didn't put too much pressure on there. You want a lot of space on the edge because when the dough expands, it will push all the toppings out the edge of the pan. If you have a better pan than I do, you can get away with that. I was just putting all this together. I mean, I went out of my way to get the bread, but as far as, or the dough, but for the ingredients, I just used everything I had and put it in a pan and went from there. It took me about 45 to 50 minutes to cook this whole thing. Um, Even after that long, it still wasn't black on anything below the pan. So if it's not really in contact with anything that's really high heat, it's going to stay really soft. So be warned, I'm promising a pan pizza, but it ended up being a pan biscuit with pizza on top. So just right there, somewhere, like, it doesn't have to be on 400 or 350. It's just got to be somewhere between 400 and 350. And just make sure you have plenty of space, because this thing's really gonna rise really high up out of the top. Like, if you're a biscuit lover and you like breakfast and you like to hang out at home and just like eat something that's really not that healthy for you, but it'll put you to sleep, maybe you're hanging out with a friend or you're with your kids, this is probably something you could do for fun. This kind of reminds me of something I did when I was like young in daycare, where we would just like take Pillsbury dough and make like whatever we could out of it. So like after about 40 to 50 minutes, you get something like this. That's pretty much what a pan pizza does on top. And you see it browned on the bottom from all the butter and margarine. And it turned black, if you can see on the sides. It's just that dough is biscuit, and it's not going to... It's pan pizza, but it's not black on the edges. So, but yeah, it turned out great. I'm pretty proud of it. If you don't want your ingredients to burn like that, turn it down just a little bit up to 350, because you're gonna have to leave it in there for at least 30 to 40 minutes. Um, and just when you start to see your pepperoni black after the mark I hit, which was like 45 minutes, you would then start to see your pepperoni blacken and maybe consider taking it out or turning the heat up for a few minutes and then pulling it out. But overall, it worked out. I ended up having to use a spatula to get it out because I made it so thick. But I mean, if you look at it, it looks like it's cheese like lasagna, but when I pull it out, it's just biscuit. Like I love it. It's real soft. It's not too cheesy. It's not too tomatoey. Um, it worked out. So I'm not really like into drinking, alcohol or anything, but this probably really would go well with a beer. Like this I'd say this type of meal would put you to sleep. And see, it cooked really well on the inside, and you see the biscuits on the bottom are the shape of a biscuit, and it looks like I put cheese on the side, but it's not cheese, it's bread, and it cooked in layers. So, but yeah, tell me what you think in the comments. Hopefully this gives you an idea on something. It looked like a lasagna at first, but it to me it just looks like I put layers of cheese and bread and did that. But yeah, thanks YouTube, and appreciate the watching the video, and I hope this recipe is useful to you.